Hello, everyone. Welcome to Horncamp Connect, an offering of Cormont music. I am your moderator and a KBHC staff member, Braden Ross. Today's session of Horncamp Connect will feature Lin Baird, KBHC faculty and professor of horn at Western Michigan University, being
Yay,
interviewed,
gold medal.
yay, being interviewed by KBHC artistic director Bernard Scully. We will hear about Lin's new role on the board of Cormont Music, her expansive, growing databases of compositions by female composers, and hear some samples from Lin's most recent recording project. As always, before we jump into the session, here are a few Zoom housekeeping items. So that everyone is able to hear the presentation, we have muted all the participants. Please stay muted for the duration of the session, unless one of our presenters asks you to unmute. If you click on the Participants tab at the bottom of the screen, you should see a participant list pop up with your name at the top. If the name associated with your Zoom account is different from your own name, please click on the blue More button next to your name, select Rename, and enter your name. If you'd like to include your pronouns with your name, please do. If you click on Chat at the bottom of your screen, you should see the chat box appear. Comments that are posted in the chat are affected by the drop-down menu above the text box. Depending on your selection, your comments may be viewed by everyone or by individual participants. Every time that you enter a comment into the chat, please double check your selection so that your comment is seen by your intended audience. And with that, I will hand the session off to Bernard.
Thanks so much, Braden. Welcome, everyone. I'm Bernard, as he just announced. I'm so delighted to be with you in this session with Professor Lin Baird. Welcome, Lin. I have just a few other announcements before we get into our discussion, and a couple really exciting things. One is that we actually have a new venue for this summer, and that venue is the Tilton School, which is in New Hampshire. The camp, as many of you know, has always been in New Hampshire since its founding in 1995. So we are keeping that tradition. This school is about an hour south of where we were before at the White Mountain School. It's a beautiful venue. It's a boarding school, just like the White Mountain School, with all the amenities, all the facilities you'd ever want and more. So for 2025, that's our new venue. Registration opens December 1st, 2024. So be sure to reserve a spot coming up. We will have scholarship applications available soon, so look out for that. More details to come. If you want to get more of our updates going forward, we have a mailing list, so you can subscribe to the mailing list if you want to get up-to-date information about KBHC. So that's my announcements, and I am just so thrilled to welcome Professor Lin Baird to our discussion today. Welcome, Lin.
Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here, Bernard. Thank you. And it's nice to have a conversation with you. If I can start, and I hope this doesn't embarrass you, but I think the first conversation we ever had was about Kendall Betts Horn Camp. And you were so excited. I don't know if you remember this. It was in a music hall across the building from the humanities. I was working as a project assistant there with Rick Mumford, and you came in. I don't remember what it was. I remember vividly where we were standing. And you were glowing and had all these great things to say. And it was so important to you, this Kendall Betts Horn Camp, which I had not experienced yet. And I just think that's fun. That's the first real conversation we had, was how great this experience was. Do you remember this?
Wow, I remember so many things about graduate school. I'm trying to draw. I mean, I remember Rick Munford. I remember the space you're describing. I remember meeting you those first couple times I met you, and I think it's coming back to me, but it's not surprising to me that I would have said that for those of you that knew me, because I mean, that was, yeah. I think the funniest thing, now that you mentioned that, even when I went to my undergrad, that was that summer of 1995 was the first Horn Camp summer. And then I went to undergrad at Northwestern, and it was a similar thing. Like, I had just experienced this camp, and I thought it was like the coolest thing in my whole life I've ever experienced. And I was just trying to tell everybody about it, and they're like thinking I'm crazy. Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, just French horns? You probably thought that I was crazy.
No, I remember how detailed you talked about coprush and the way coprush was taught at the camp and Kendall's approach to teaching coprush. I mean, we went into great detail about coprush in the camp in that conversation. It was
Wow, I
just
guess my mind has been wired that way for longer than I had thought.
right.
Well, I'm glad you remember that.
Yeah.
Well, there are lots of good memories. I mean, when we were students, I mean, that was a real privilege. Because you were finishing your doctoral degree
Yep.
when I was entering as a master's student. So we didn't really have any classes together. We didn't play
Right.
any ensembles together, but I would see
Right.
you occasionally, and I remember seeing your brilliant performance of Mozart's Fourth Concerto for you won the concerto competition.
Yeah.
I was like, man, she's got some skills. It was very, very beautiful. Um, and just being in the environment of University of Wisconsin horn studio with Doug, I mean, that was such an amazing experience.
Yep.
But so then you were that year afterwards, you were off. Like basically, you had finished your project, I think, after my first year, at the end of my first year, and
That's right.
I saw your DMA recital as well when you gave the presentation about what was to become your database
Yeah.
and your first recording. I believe you'd already done that first recording of works by female composers.
That came about just before I left Madison. So that was in August of 2003.
Yeah, that
And
was
I first
exactly right.
recorded.
So that was the end of my second year there, essentially. So all that stuff I was just watching you kind of set the stage for the rest of your
Yeah.
career. And you were playing all the time with the Milwaukee Symphony. You were playing with Madison Symphony, and you got a position right away. I think in was it University of New Mexico?
Well, I came to Western Michigan University, where I am now, in 2003. That was right after I made that recording in August. That was the last project
Oh,
in Madison. And then I moved here immediately for a 1-year position. And then that year I was applying for other jobs because this was just a 1-year position. And I was offered the job, a horn music theory position at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque.
oh,
And
now I'm getting it right. So you got this job like right out of school. I mean, 1 year position, yeah, but I mean, still, I mean, who gets a
right,
job like that, a
right.
professor job right out of school? I mean, that's amazing.
I'm very
Um,
Yeah, it was it was a whirlwind. It was really fast. I remember asking Doug Hill, and I see he's on the call right now. He called me and I was like, "Do you think I'm ready for this? Really? Should I apply?" And he's like, "I wouldn't be calling you if I didn't think you were ready."
more than ready, right?
So it worked out. Yeah, that was a success story for me. Yeah, and I took a chance too. I accepted. I didn't have a job here at the end of that first year, but I wanted to stay, and so I decided to not move to New Mexico. My family's in the Midwest. I loved this job that first year, and so I just took a risk and hoped that it would turn into something more full time, and it ended up working out. So
I'll
yeah.
say, yeah. Now
Yeah.
you basically you have a long tradition. You've established over 2 decades of amazing teaching and
Yeah.
a legacy for yourself at the school. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. It's a good place. I love the students here. I love my colleagues. I love the arts community. So it's a good place. I intend to stay put.
They also, like medicine, have good beer in Kalamazoo.
They do have good beer here. It's
I'm a little
true.
bit jealous. We have some newer breweries here, but I don't think it's quite at the level of
Bells,
Michigan or
special.
Bell's. Yeah. So
Yep. Yep. And the founder's just north of here. So it's a good
that
place.
that's both of those are amazing
Yeah.
breweries.
Yeah.
Um, so much history between us. And then you came on the faculty of the camp because Doug had joined the faculty of the camp. Trying to put two and two together. I think did he join 2003 or 2004? I can't
I
remember
think
now.
it's 2003. I think he had been there a couple of years. And then I was hired in 2005. That was my first summer at KBHC.
That's right. That's right. So you have been on the faculty now. Essentially, you've been for like 20 years.
Yeah, almost 20 years. Yeah.
That's incredible. So thereby, you have built the tradition of the Kendall Betts Horn Camp for that long, which is 2/3 of its existence at this point.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I was compelled by your advertisement.
I
And
think I mean I remember talking to Doug too. I was like, Doug, this camp is really cool.
yeah.
You know, I'm sure Doug got hired on his own merits, but it wasn't because of
Yeah.
me. But Kendall did. I think Kendall was curious. Like, so how do you like studying with Doug? I was like, I love Doug. He's yeah, you're good too, but he's really great.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
So
I think uh, when he moved more in a direction, Kendall moved more in a direction of hiring more teachers around that
yeah,
time,
yeah,
and I think that was a good move and strong and a good for our campers as part of that experience to work with folks who were professionally working on pedagogy and nurturing students to play their best. I think that's what our camp is what's so special about the camp is that, I mean, if you heard some of the preliminary music, that's all live performances. It's just so inspiring to hear the horn, the faculty staff horn ensemble. I mean, it's just like, it gives me goosebumps. It's so fun. But it also is a great place where you can connect with really strong musicians, and no matter your level or where you are or your experience with the horn, we come together because we love the horn, and we want everyone to be able to benefit and be able to find their way and become their own best player through the experiences at camp. And it really is a special place. I don't live in the mountains. Usually I don't see mountains. I'm in the flat Midwest. So it's so fun and it's so beautiful to go to New Hampshire every summer and explore this. It's sort of like we're in our own world, we're separated from the world and able to do our work and experience this beautiful place all together, all centered around Horn. So yeah.
wow, that's a great way to describe it. Yeah, I've always thought of it as an immersive experience. You're just
Yeah.
all of a sudden with all these like-minded people of all different abilities and ages, um, experience levels, and just working together very collaboratively to learn and grow as musicians. So, yeah, I'm
And I
glad you.
want to talk a little bit about being on the board too, because that's
Yes.
part of what I love being, I'm so honored to receive your invitation, and it said that the board was interested in my possibly running. I'm very excited to serve in this capacity and help the organization move forward. I feel like the way that the organization handled the pandemic, I just played a concert last night. I see Margaret Hamilton is on the call, there she was. And I was sitting next to Margaret Hamilton, and she said that these Horn Camp Connect online offerings was a lifeline for her. That's the word she used last night. And I agree. And not only are we all, it's centered around Horn, this experience, but we all have our own lives doing other things. Many of us are professional teachers, professional performers, or administrators, or do something completely outside of music. We have lawyers, doctors, all. And so it's so fun to use all of our areas of expertise to come together and make this thing work. That's what makes this thing work, is that we bring our whole selves to all of this and learn from each other in Horn, but also in life. It's fun we have informal conversations, all of our at Horn Camp. All of the meals are shared. Everyone sits with each other, and it's so rewarding. I learned so much by talking with the participants about what it is that they do and how Horn fits into their greater lives. It's just such a special thing.
Yeah, I agree totally. It's funny you mentioned the meals. I always feel like that's one of the points that people don't mention often. You don't think about it. We're talking about all the classes and things, but when you get to sit down and actually, next to a bunch of campers of all different ages and from different places, and really just sit there for the hour and talk, and they get to know you, you get to know them, you establish, much deeper relationships with people.
Yeah.
I feel the camp is, yeah, it's a great place where I think people have those transformative relational experiences during the week. It's not just like come here, learn, and go. It's really we want to get to know you, and you get to know us, and that it's so fulfilling. So it's great to hear you talk about that.
It's my extended family, and I know some participants feel the same way.
Yeah, yes, yeah. It's a family away from home for sure.
Yep.
Well, we're just delighted that you accepted the invitation to join the board of directors. When Kendall was running the camp, the board of directors, he had the board of directors, and he was largely doing most of the work himself. And
Right.
he didn't really want. I mean, he was able to do a lot of stuff, and it was impressive. I certainly could never do the level of work that he was doing. But when he passed away, and he asked us to carry on the tradition, we had to come together and like you're saying, like work together with all of our various skill sets. I can do some things that I cannot do many things, and so all these people came together and essentially rebuilt the organization. So the board of directors really has served the vital capacity, the vital role in the building of the organization, the directing of the organization. And so when this vacancy happened, you were the first person I thought of, and many other people thought of, because you've been involved so long with the organization. I mean, everyone knows that you're just awesome. So we were like really excited to work with you in this capacity, as a director capacity. And so we're just thrilled that you've taken that on, and excited. I mean, excited for the future of the organization. Okay, so but we have some things to talk about in terms of really exciting things that you have done professionally. Starting with, can you tell us about your database, your website? Like I
Sure.
mentioned earlier, that you started to do that when 20 years ago, and now it's turned into the resource for women composers for horn and brass. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So, I like to tell the story, and I'll be brief with this because many of you have heard this story before. But uh, in it was 1999 that I was having just a casual conversation with a colleague, former fellow student at UW-Madison, and I had the realization that I had never performed a solo piece by a woman composer. And this wasn't intentional, and I was just mentioning that to my friend, and I said, "Why do you think that is?" And he very off the cuff, casually said, "It's because they aren't good. Those works aren't good." And that was a light bulb moment for me, because I felt the same way. I realized that, oh yeah, because I've been cultured, like I have sort of been taught this, not intentionally, but unintentionally, that I made that assumption as well, that I want to play good repertoire. And so again, the light bulb went off, and I thought, that can't be true. There's something here that I need to educate myself better about, and I need to learn more about this. And so I set out to see, what other pieces were out there by women composers. Cindy Carr, maybe some of you know that name, had created a CD of pieces for horn by women composers, and that was an excellent first resource for me. But other than that, there really wasn't a resource for finding pieces. And at this time, early 2000s, a lot of my research was in the library. It was looking at books and looking at lists of pieces that was put together by other, like a flute artist. And I remember there was a bassoon book that I found. There were a couple research reference books that I had found that became the first entries into the database. So my master's degree recital was called "Women's Works Aren't Performed Because They Aren't Good." And I played a whole recital of pieces by women composers just to explore that. And then shortly after that, I was in a research class, and Susan Cook taught that class, and we needed to come up with a project. And that was the beginning of this database. It was a class assignment to create a spreadsheet of these pieces that I was finding in the library. And so I had the idea that perhaps this could develop into a dissertation topic, and so explored this idea with Doug. He was highly supportive through the whole process and gave me pieces, and we had lots of really good conversations about this early on. And yeah, so the website was part of the dissertation project. I created a recording of pieces, all premiere recordings except for one. The Jane Vinery Sonata had been recorded once by Freudis Vekra in the 1970s, but everything else, these were premiere recordings, and that'll be important. That's part of my overall mission, is to accessibility and to record as many of these pieces as possible. And then I created an annotated guide for performers of pieces for horn and piano by women composers. So it gave some background to the subject, and then I gave some biographical information and some program notes for pieces, just to help people program these pieces and make these pieces more accessible. So that was in the early 2000s. A lot of time had passed. I was doing research and updates to the database very slowly. It just wasn't my area of focus for a while. And then COVID happened. So the database was maintained, but perhaps some new research needed to be done. And that's what I came to realize. In 2020, the summer of 2020, I had a 1.5-year-old son at home. Daycare shut down, and my husband was an essential employee, and he was moved to second shift. So he had to clock in at 4 in the afternoon, and he came home at 3 o'clock in the morning. And so I would put my son to sleep, and I had to figure out how to finish the school year with under these circumstances, and get through the summer, and that fall it was similar. And so the only thing that kept me sane was this database. In the early 2000s, there was hardly any there was hardly any information that was available on the internet about women composers. It just wasn't there wasn't as much information available in that way. But in the 20 years since, there was a lot of information available, and I found a lot of new pieces. I doubled the number of titles that are included in the catalog. I spent over 500 hours those evenings researching, just going through every page on my website and researching and updating all of those. And it was really fun. I love going down that rabbit hole and learning new pieces. And I have a spreadsheet where I say, oh, I should play this in the future. Oh, students should play this. And so I like to make annotations as I'm doing the research. It became clear to me as well. I adjudicate solo and ensemble festival a lot, and I've never heard a solo piece by a female woman composer performed. And we did one of these Horn Camp Connect sessions during COVID, and that was a question that I received. What about younger players? You know, your website is great, but how do we get younger players playing this? And I was starting to ask that question myself. And so I applied for a couple research grants here, and purchased many of these new pieces that I had recently discovered. I put them in 5 categories. So I gave them a grade so that we could more easily see which pieces were appropriate for beginners all the way up through advanced players. So I've given it a numerical system of 1 through 5, 1 being for beginners and 5 for more advanced students. And then what became really clear is that a lot of these pieces, they're either, it's hard. I went through the process of ordering them, and it was either difficult to acquire. So I can't imagine a high school student going through the same process to order something from Europe or whatever. Or there was no recording available. So it's hard to tell. You just see it as a line item on a database. So I wanted to make these more easily accessible to younger players. That's what I've been doing in the last 2 or 3 years. So also during COVID, I added links to the database so that you can click on the title and hear the piece, and you can click on the publisher information, and that'll take you to somewhere where you can purchase the sheet music. So I wanted to create a list of pieces that I found were compelling, that were easily, you could obtain them easily. They were easy to purchase, I should say. And that there were no recordings available. I wanted to create another album of premiere recordings for younger players. So that's what this newest project is.
So I was going
Um,
to say that's the next thing
yeah,
we'll talk about is your album.
yeah.
Right.
So this,
I'm just going to jump in with the question.
oh, sure,
With the
sure,
question, Lynn.
of course, this is
Carly's
right.
here, and she's wondering where we can find Freudis's recording of the Viennese Sonata,
Oh, that's a
because
very
this is
good
the first we've heard of it.
Okay, that's a very good question. It was an LP. Wait. Okay, one second. The advantage of being in my office is I can pick it up.
I suppose you probably already searched Apple Music. I'm just going to search it real quick to see maybe
Yeah,
for this.
it was this.
Oops, wait.
No, it's not. Okay, that's a very good question. I don't have it. I think I have it on a copy of a CD. It was an LP that I found at the library in Madison. That's a very good question. I haven't even researched to see if it's available online. Are you finding anything, Bernard?
I'm looking. I see the ones that I know. These, the Song of the Wolf,
Right.
the one where she did Adagio and Allegro, that one. No, she did the one where she did the concerto. Song of the Wolf, which has the Madsen, but not. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, that's a great question.
It's a
Probably
very good.
on
I don't
LP.
have
That yeah, you know where that might be. That might be in the University of Wisconsin Madison collection.
part of the horn collection there. Yeah.
Yeah, that could be.
Yeah, exactly. So Madison, I was at the time working in the music library at University of Wisconsin-Madison, and uh, there's a special horn collection. There are thousands of recordings, and I was going through a lot of LPs at that time, and so I think I ran across it as part of that project. But I haven't. I appreciate the question. I have not seen or heard that recording in a while, in many years. So I wonder if it's now just in libraries. It may no longer be available. So
I'm going to keep searching online. You keep
sounds great.
talking.
Yeah, good. So the new CD, I'll talk about that, or album. I do want to back up and say that my pianist and I, Helen Lucan, she is the pianist on the new album. We did a conference at the Michigan Music Conference. We did a presentation at the Michigan Music Conference in January of 2023. And so we worked together, we had 4 different rehearsals where we just read the stack of pieces that I had purchased, and I recorded those reading sessions because it's really helpful for me to go back and get a better sense of the piece, and whether I want to add it to my repertoire or not. And so the two of us, it really was a collaborative decision to decide what we would like to present. And then it turned into a recording, like what we would want to record. And I considered doing more informal, just a bunch of YouTube recordings to post. But again, this distribution piece I'm finding is really important as I do this work. Things go away. There are, like, for instance, this Freudis recording that we're talking about. So I wanted this project to be tethered to a distribution company. And so I felt like going with a label, actually putting these pieces together in an album, was important for the longevity of the recordings to be available. So I put them together in an album. Not, I wasn't sure if they would all fit, if it worked as a collection. But I think it does. And the main purpose, what I was really excited to do, was to actually link in all of the different pages that I have on my website, which we probably should share at some point. the links to the recordings, that's really the important part for me. Yeah, thank you. So if you click on horn and piano, and even right now, click on horn and piano by difficulty. That's the new page that I've been working out lately. And if you click on elementary, for instance, down here, click here for, there you go. Thank you, Braden. Then you will see the piece that there are a couple pieces that I most recently recorded, the 3 pieces by Elena Forsova, and then Judith Knight's 2 pieces. There were no recordings of those pieces. Oh, and The Legend as well by Elena Forsova. There were no recordings of those pieces before I did this project. And so that's what I was really excited about. It's like, oh yes, now there are recordings of these pieces. The other piece, the Sophia Goodbye Delina, excellent piece, but as you can see, availability, it's very difficult to acquire. And so I just, in this round, I decided to not prioritize the pieces that a student couldn't actually order the sheet music easily. So I focused on the pieces that were medium to easy to acquire. So I'd love at this point, I've been blabbing. I want you to hear some of these pieces. So I hope that you're okay. We're just going to do a little bit of a listening together. And I have 5 different pieces I wanted to share. They're brief selections. And I thought it might be interesting for those on the call today. This is information. I'll provide some program notes for some of these pieces, which is not published anywhere. So this information can only be gathered right here in this session. So you will be privy to this special information. And so the first piece I wanted to share, and this might be a good place to stop if we needed any questions, or Bernard, can I take us in this direction, or do you have anything?
I think it's perfect. I think we should.
Okay, very good.
I'm excited to hear it.
Okay,
Please.
so I want to let's listen. And these are sound files. When I go back and listen to it, I feel like these were the most successful from this project, and I wanted to share these with you. So from the new album, Monique Ciccone Botella, her piece titled Autumn is the first piece that I'd like for you to hear. I gave this a grading level 3, which is medium difficulty, suitable for advanced middle school and younger high school students. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about the composer. She was born in 1936, French pianist, music educator, as well as a composer. She studied at the Paris Conservatory in the 1960s, and this piece was composed in 1962 for who was one of the horn professors there at the time, Jean Devemy. He was horn professor at the Paris Conservatory from 1937 to 69. And I wanted to start with this piece because I think it's seasonally appropriate. It's called Autumn. It's a short lyrical piece, charming, but I think the word that best describes it for me is bittersweet. I just think it's really beautiful, and I want more younger players to play this. So let's start with that first selection. All right. Thanks for listening.
That was
Oh,
so beautiful.
thank you. Piece is just charming. I think it should be part of our repertoire. More people should be playing this. That's
You're
the other
playing is beautiful too. I mean,
Yeah.
let's be
Oh,
clearly
thank you. Um,
clear, beautiful sound.
oh, I appreciate that. Some of these pieces I've had in my file cabinet for a long time, and it's hard to program them. It's been hard to figure out how to use them, and so it's been so fun to actually be able to play these pieces, many of which I've known about for a while. I just haven't been able to program them. So yeah. So this next selection that I wanted to share is by Adrian Fox. It's called Two Chrome Vignettes, and these are two short movements by Miss Fox. She was born in 1941. She's a British composer, and I love this. At the age of 60, she started learning to play the horn. So she started studying the horn, and she now currently plays in 3 amateur orchestras in England. She was a music educator before she retired, and she said composition is her happiest occupation in retirement. And this piece is dedicated to her horn teacher. His name is Paul Campen, and the copyright is 2007, so a little more recent. So if we could play, Braden, the Two Chrome Vignettes. Thank you. And let's go right into the second movement. Yeah, boisterously. So I forgot to mention that one. Thank you. I categorize that as a level 2, an intermediate level piece. So suitable for intermediate students, typically in their 2nd or 3rd year. And you can hear that in listening, but that's
Yeah.
that's a number 2 category. This next set of pieces is in the beginner category. So if you have beginning students, these pieces would be appropriate for them. These are 3 pieces by Elena Fursova. Elena Fursova was born in 1950. She was born in Russia, and she now lives and works in England. She's composed several pieces for many different ensembles, and I connected with her on Facebook to receive updated. I think through interlibrary loan, I had old scans of these pieces, and I was able to reach out to her on Facebook, and she gave me links to purchase updated versions of these pieces. They were originally published in 1980. And what I love about these pieces, they're serious, which I think is unique for beginning repertoire. And they're sparse, but really beautiful, and allows the student to work on just real basic technique of beauty and sound, clarity of articulation. But I think there's a depth of expression here that is quite different from many of the beginning pieces that I am aware of. So I think it's a unique place. So these are, again, appropriate for beginner level pieces. And these are the 3 pieces by Elena Fursova.
I love that, by the way.
Thank you.
It's so fun.
Fun. It is really fun. I forgot to mention the titles. That last title was called The Remote Echoes. And then the middle movement, the fun passing around of the staccato notes, is Tournament. And then By Lena is the name of the title of the first movement. And you know, it's easy with technique, but these pieces demand a lot of intonation control, as well as dynamic range and control. I mean, I will concede that it's challenging to imagine a beginning player playing this. And because the piano part is so sparse, it can be, you know, perhaps intimidating. But and that's my trouble. You know, I love these pieces. Where do they fit? Like, how do I program and perform these pieces? I don't know. Maybe those on the call can figure out a way to make these pieces more you know, widely performed and known by performers. But I just think that's really beautiful music, and I want people to be able to play these pieces more and know about them.
Indeed, it is beautiful. Your playing is beautiful. And I was just thinking as I was listening to these last few pieces, like how starkly different they are, first of all.
Yeah.
Like they all explore really interesting. I mean, the second one clearly is a rhythmic, you know, study and an imitation study almost with the
Right.
piano. And it kind of becomes almost like this, you know, the sonic landscape keeps opening up in many
Right.
ways. And in this last one, you're really exploring this like highly underexplored pentatonicism,
Right.
which is so present in so much of the world's music, quite frankly, yet not so represented in the music we commonly play as horn players. So I'm thinking, I think you should start these pieces off early because I mean,
Yeah.
part of the challenge would be this isn't what I'm hearing in a lot of my other kind of more traditional study, tonal wise or even rhythmically, but that should become the norm, you know, because there are
Yep.
so many different languages. I think the fact that you're sharing this and you know, this piece is really something. So yeah,
Thank you, Bernard. I appreciate that. Thank you.
yeah.
Okay, so now we'll move to a completely different direction. Eileen Clues, these pieces are very quirky, fun. I give them a category. It depends on the movement. Some of them I graded as a 2, and some I thought they were more in the 3 category, which is medium difficulty, suitable for advanced middle school and younger high school students. But they are tricky to learn. These are more rhythmically challenging. You'll hear the movements are very short. Each one is 1 minute. And I thought the best movements to present for this presentation today are skittish, offbeat waltz, and then the final one is circus polka. Let me tell you a little bit about Eileen Clues. She lived from 1935 to 2021. I actually just learned that she passed away recently. And her first published composition is her partita for horn, written for her son, Richard, who is a professional horn player. He was principal horn at the Royal Opera House in England. And this piece was published in 1988. So these are 3 movements from her 9 pieces. makes you chuckle.
Wonderful. You know, I got a comment to make too about the last few pieces we've heard. I think about another difficulty, you know, when we give music to young players, and certainly we all experience this as young players, you know, sometimes the first thing that's given to us is a Mozart concerto,
Yeah.
you know. Now, if there are any pianists out there, I mean, how many pianists just loathe these Mozart concertos, right? They're really hard to play. These
Yeah.
reductions are terrible, you know,
Yeah.
or even the Strauss first concerto. I mean, that's not often the first piece a student would get, but you know, the last movement of the third concerto, the second movement of the third concerto, these are very typical early pieces. And for pianistically, this can, you know, how many young students have access to world-class pianists, you know, to accompany them?
Right.
Not many, you know.
Right.
And these piano parts for these pieces, I'm hearing, I mean, they're really effective and so well written. They also seem very playable. They also
Yep.
seem very learnable by even like, say, somebody who has good knowledge of piano, maybe is not a professional pianist. I could be wrong, but they strike me as that as well.
Yeah, I appreciate your pointing that out. Yeah, thank you, and bringing that up. I'm also curious on the call. I mean, I see a lot of friends who I know teach younger students, and I would love. I have one more piece I want to share with you, and I would love your take on some of these pieces, and if you think you might use some of these pieces with your students, or if you know of other pieces that you might recommend for younger students, particularly those by women composers. So as we're listening, please feel free to chime in. And so I have one more piece I'd like to share before we do that. This is a piece I played at Horn Camp this past summer. It's by Mabel Hardy called Moody Horn. And I couldn't find a lot of information about the composer or the piece. This is a piece that Doug Hill gave me, actually, so that's how I acquired the music, but it is still available. It was published in 1974, and it features the low register. So I think that's really fun. I love playing in the low register. I think her dates are 1875 to 1971. I found that on the internet, a reference to a composer who lived during that time. And then I just looked up before this presentation, and Rick Serafinoff's new book that has, you all know of this book, Solo Horn Repertoire, Guide to Solo Horn Repertoire. I hope you all know this book, Guide to Solo Horn Repertoire. There's a lot of great program notes and program information. And this, I've gone through and looked for titles of pieces by women composers in here as well to see what I've missed. But in here, they also think that this is the same Mabel Hardy who lived from 1875 to 1971. So this one's a big question mark, but it is still a very effective, fun piece to play. So let's, and this one, I give it a level 4. I think it fits within suitable for advanced high school students and younger college music majors. So this is Moody Horn by Mabel Hardy. All right. Thank you.
Absolutely stunning playing, Lynn.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Bernard. Thank you.
I mean, that's been part of the treat of this too, learning all these new pieces, but hearing you play, awesome. Wow, I mean, this is such an amazing resource. I mean, it's so multifaceted because on one end, it's just a piece of art. You know, it's like we listen to it and we enjoy the playing. On another number of levels, it's going to be a resource that is really, you know, you're helping to shape the next generation and generations of horn players and helping to re-inform those of us in later generations in the horn world as well. So this is something which is invaluable, and we can't thank you enough for taking this project on and being a leader in this area.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. So I'd love, Braden, are there comments? I'm not looking at the chat at all. It's too distracting. So whatever.
Yeah, Janet just weighed in and asked, would any of these pieces qualify for solo and ensemble regarding the time limit?
Regarding the time limit, absolutely. I believe it's 2 minutes. Oh gosh, I would want to look that up to make sure. When I adjudicate, the room monitor determines whether the piece is the appropriate length. But I believe it has to be over 2 minutes. That's the minimum. And so, yes, most of these pieces, that last one was 3 minutes, for instance, and any of these collections, you could play the two movements together as part of, you don't have to, the time limit for solo and ensemble festival. And, you know, I probably should do some more educating about that as well. I think people are nervous to give new pieces to their students because they're not sure what the rules are around what's possible and what's permissible. But I will tell you, in the state of Michigan, my experience is that there's a minimum number of minutes that a piece needs to be, and it has to be over 2 minutes. And then we don't have a specific repertoire list. That actually is, I have that as a sticky note on my desk right now. How do we, the states where they do have lists, how do we penetrate that with these pieces? You know, there are these, you know, the canon of the repertoire. There are places where that is highly specified, and some places they actually have Google Forms where you could submit pieces. And so that probably will be the next step for me, is to figure out how to get into all the different states and their solo and ensemble programs, so that it's real clear which pieces qualify and are qualify. I did mention, I have been in communication, for those of you who work in Michigan, there's a piece that's free on my website, the website that you saw on the first page. So if you just go to linfolk.org or linfolkbaird.org. On the first page, it's Edna Frida Pich's Canzonetta. I actually typeset that myself, and I received permission from thank you, right there. I received permission from the family of the composer and the University of Wisconsin-Madison to make this piece available. I contacted MSBOA about this specific piece, and I said, would this be permissible at Solo and Ensemble Festival? And they said yes. So even, you know, something like this. So I would guess that any of these pieces I just presented today would be permissible at festival, as long as it met the minimum time limit.
In a second here, there's going to be a poll where people can pick their favorite piece. Maybe after this next question, that'll go up. And there is a question, have you shared the information in your database with the Boulanger Initiative?
Yes, I have reached out to Boulanger, and we don't really have a relationship between the two of us. This work started way before the Boulanger initiative came on the scene. And I know that there is a horn player, Katie McKinley, working for Boulanger Initiative right now. So I feel pretty confident that they're doing good work to make sure that uh, female composers of horn music, women composers of horn music, is being well represented there. But yeah, that's a highly they do a lot of good advocacy, and they have a lot of good publicity work and events. And I'm very involved, or I'm very aware of their work and what they're doing, but I am not affiliated with that organization.
So now there's a poll up now where people can pick their favorite recording. We can see.
I love this. Thank you. I didn't know we were doing this. So while we let that tally, are there any other questions that have not been answered yet?
Lynn, if there aren't questions yet, I wanted to just point something out that I learned recently, which I was embarrassed to not know. I mean, to kind of put this in the broader context, the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra um, did not commission a woman to write an opera for over 130 years from its inception until I think it was 2018 or 19 with Missy Mazzoli. Is that
Oh yeah,
correct? I
yeah.
mean, just so lest we think like this is, oh, it's kind of a, why are we thinking about this or something? I mean, that's pretty, when I really saw that and understood, I mean, didn't even reach out to a woman or consider a woman to write a piece or a piece that had been written by a woman to consider and then had to commission someone in 2000, late 2010s. That really kind of puts this in perspective, in the broader scheme of things. One of the most iconic and well-known classical music institutions in the United States and abroad, representing the art form. So I think, I mean, that's really something, isn't it?
Thank you for articulating that in that way and for sharing that fact. I think some of us, we can sort of take for granted that uh, this kind of work. But I think the assumption that it's not uh, far-fetched or unusual that, my colleague at UW-Madison who said, pieces by women composers aren't performed because they aren't good. I think that we internalize that. That becomes our that becomes our assumption, is that a woman has not been commissioned to write an opera for the Metropolitan Opera uh, because they, you just think about, how do you work that out in your mind? There must be some reason. There are these gatekeepers who they allow only the best to be presented, in these organizations. And so you make an assumption that I'm hearing the best that's presented, and it really just, it's kind of a facade. It's
Totally.
there are a lot of composers, there are a lot of musical voices that we don't hear about because of very deep uh, cultural stigma or discrimination, or whatever it is that you want to call it. I mean, I don't talk a lot specifically about that because there are a lot of people who do that better than I do. Talk about the problem. Uh, I feel like my best role is to just quietly make these resources available and, keep
Yep.
pulsing out into the community. Here's some pieces. Here we go. We can do better. I find that that's the best way that I've been able to figure out how to remedy the issue.
Well, the other issue that you were clearly pointing out is categorically false. That I was even told as young, like, why aren't there more pieces by women composers? They go, oh, they're not very many. It's
Right.
like that's the other one. They're not there. They're either not there or they're not good, or
Right.
both, or something. It's like clearly both of those things are totally false. You
Right.
know, so
So we
Yeah,
have to make a little bit of an effort. I mean, this question, I so appreciate this. Like, if I give this piece to my student and they're going to work on this for months, is it going to be eligible? You know, I want to be sure that I'm leading my students in the right direction. I want to help folks, yes, you know, give you confidence that yes, you can figure out how to use these pieces in contests and festivals and yeah, all of the places where we make music, these pieces would be appropriate. Okay, I love this poll. Thank you so much. So it looks like the 2 chrome vignettes is the favorite piece. I love that. I wouldn't have guessed it. That's wonderful. I'm gonna write
It
this down.
looks like there's another question, but Carly might have something to say first. Is
Sure,
that right?
I do. Hi, Lynn.
Carly.
Uh,
Smile.
I have, so I recently brought up to my colleagues, I'm in an Air Force band, for those who don't know, former student of Lynn. And I'm the only woman. And the whole last year of my job, we've only played music by dead white guys or living white guys. Um, and we're having some situations with the group, people coming and going. It's just kind of the process. Sorry, there's a glare. And a few weeks ago, I went through every piece on your website and I was like, I got to find music for us. Like, if I'm not, why does it take me, the only woman in the group, the first woman in the group, to bring this to life? So we bought music from Libby Larson, Rena Esmail, Alyssa Wright, and then we bought into the Gala Flagello Consortium. But I think, and there's not necessarily an answer to this, but in your experience, how come it has to take us to be the ones to initiate this movement? Why can't this just be natural for some of our colleagues with the different gender identities than us?
Yeah, I don't know why, but the converse of that is, why would we expect it to be otherwise? You know, I think of my male colleagues down the hallway. Why would I expect them to be interested in this? And why would I expect them to seek out these resources? This is important to me. This representation is really important to me. And so, yeah, it's work, but it's so fulfilling. It's so, I feel like I'm part of the solution by doing this kind of work. And sure, you can just stay focused on the problem. And if you did not purchase those pieces, where, you know, you wouldn't have done anything to help solve that issue. So I don't know how it could be otherwise. And another question I often get too is like, the progress on this is so glacial. Yeah, I've been working on this for 25 years, you know, and if you give up, then we're not gonna progress. So yeah, it takes a long time, and it takes all of us with our different skill sets and our different circumstances. And you know, it takes all of us to be part of this conversation. I feel like most recently, for the first time, you know, I play in the Western Brass Quintet here at Western. And for the first time, we were doing programming, and one of my colleagues said, "Oh, but there isn't a piece by a woman composer." And I just beamed. Like, I'm like, okay, my job, I'm not going to gloat. I'm not going to even mention any, I'm not going to say anything. But I feel like I have been successful. I can take credit for that because I've been talking about this for so long in a subtle way. That allows them to, you know, engage with it on their own. I'm not going to shove this down anybody's throat. When they're ready, they will, and they are getting it. It's so rewarding to not be, and I hear your exhaustion too, you know, it's so rewarding that it's like, okay, now it's not just me saying we should prioritize this. It's now my colleagues have the same feeling about that, and that's becoming more normal. I could have never guessed that. I feel like I've been fighting against the grain my whole life, and now it's becoming more normal, and I have to figure out, you know, how to continue to keep the conversation going, because we have not solved this problem like we talked about, Bernard, you and I. we're still not, and Carly, what you just mentioned, so there still is work that needs to be done, but we all have to all find ways to, make those inroads and try not to get frustrated by the system. And I think that's real important too. This is a systemic problem that we can blame on some individuals, sure, in our lives, but this is beyond individuals. We are changing culture and society with this. It's a much bigger issue that we're trying to solve. That's bigger than just individual people.
Lynn, thank you for mentioning that. And can I bring up one point that I know that you have been in the forefront on? Because, talking from systemic change and a strategy that some of you who are teachers and all of you who are horn players might consider. The idea that, that in the original training, kind of the quote, traditional training of not just horn, but classical music, I mean, it's been primarily focused on, technical proficiency. Oh, sorry, someone is, hope you can't hear that. It's my phone. Sorry. Has been primarily focused on technical proficiency of works of the past and rendering of those works. And so the identity then of the people, most people who are learning classical music and they're by the horn, since that's so embedded in the art form, is that we're not to really create very much. We're not to improvise, for instance, which was a part of the tradition of Western music up until like the late 1800s, when this new kind of ideology of like, well, we know what pieces are good, and now you just all have to play them and perfect them. It's been going on for a long time. We think it's normal, but actually that was kind of a radical shift. So one of the strategies that I've been trying to put forth to my students, and I know you have done the same thing, and you were a practitioner of it yourself, is to now broaden the identity of people in the art form to say, you all, yes, you perform music, and we will perform music of dead composers and all of that, but you are also composers. You are also improvisers. You do these, you have this multifaceted identity, which would then hopefully encourage many people to then think, oh, I could compose something, because just to be told you can do that, to be allowed. And I thank, our beloved professor, Douglas Hill, for showing us that, being a lived example of that. And that idea of, that broadening of the identity. So, I was going to mention one more thing. I had a student, a DMA student, you probably know her, Kelly Langenberg, Dr. Kelly Langenberg, because she consulted you. And she was doing this project, this DMA project, about early pieces for the horn, because she, just like you, had realized there's all basically nothing, for this level. And one of the first things I should talk about too, I was going to get your opinion on this. When we commission people to write, because that was her first course of action, she didn't consider herself a composer, because I said to her, you should write it. She's like, I don't know. And then she reached out to a number of composers, but the problem with commissioning or reaching out to composers and asking them to write, say, beginning level pieces is many composers who now consider themselves to be, say, serious or established composers, they showed themselves to be quite reticent to do this. And not to blame them, but this was something they, it wasn't a common thing, because also then you're limiting somebody as well. It's not just the fact that they'd be writing in, say, a earlier developmental level, which would limit it, but also you literally are putting some barriers which composers don't tend to like.
Right.
So that was Kelly ended up, at my suggestion, writing these pieces herself, which explored these early techniques. I don't know if you've seen that dissertation.
I have not seen it yet, but I will write it down.
Oh yeah, you got to check it out. She wrote two pieces, for horn and piano. And I was so, it was such an amazing, joyous thing to watch that process. But it also made me realize, like, that's how we can also begin to push back on the systemic issue, which is that people just aren't being told they can create anything anyways.
Right.
So I don't know, that's a lot of information, but I just thought I'd throw it out there.
And I want to add to that, who knows our instrument better than us? Horn players. And so a lot of times, composers write for our instrument and they aren't really aware of all the possibilities and, all of the, just the ways in which they can utilize the full capacity of the horn. And so I think it has been a tradition in the past that that composers there are many professional performers who have composed for our instrument. Bernard Kroll, I can think of, and Doug Hill, Jeff Agrell. We have this in our history, but I told,
Gallet, Bololi,
thank
like the
you.
old, all
Exactly.
those folks.
Exactly. There are a lot of examples of that. And so we should all be contributing and writing. And I say that to myself as well. I've just focused on other things, but I love the idea of that too. Yeah.
Someone asks, where can we purchase these pieces?
Right. So if you go to the website, and maybe we could do this together, Braden, do you mind going back to the website? And click on horn and piano by difficulty. Right, and click on the elementary link again. So if you wanted a piece for your beginning horn player, then if you click on the publisher information, so if it is underlined and in bold, then that means, yeah. And so if you click on that, let's hope this isn't a dead one. And this is the problem with some of these, the links expire. Yeah, Emma Gregan, that'd be great. Or this is fine too. Yeah, excellent. Oh wait, okay, good. That was easy. So that's become available even since I've done this research. That's awesome. Okay, good. It seemed like there was a limitation to that. So anyway, as I go into links, we might want to change how easy that is to access. Try the Judith Knight one too. Let's see what comes up with if you click on the Stainer and Bell. Yeah, there you go. So this takes you to Boozy, so you can purchase that way. Yeah. And some of these are just, they're either the most reliable or easiest places where you can purchase, but there may be other ways to purchase as well. So if you find a dead link, just do a Google search, and that's exactly what I did in creating this research, and you'll find it. I tried to create this resource to expedite that process, so it's a little quicker and easier. But on each page, so if we go back, click on horn and piano by difficulty again, there you go, and go down to intermediate, you'll see for each of these, yeah, there are a little bit more pieces composed for intermediate students. And then could you go back again, Braden? Horn and piano by difficulty, and then click on medium difficulty, level 3s. There you go. Yeah. And you can see there's still several pieces in here that there is not a recording or publisher information isn't available. I keep it here in case it should become available. Yeah, exactly. But if you click on publisher links, that's the way to purchase scores. For many cases, this is how I was able to purchase the score. Thank you. Thanks for that question.
See if there's any more questions. Anybody have any other questions for Lynn today?
I've got a question. I think it's always interesting to hear how people went about creating an album, and I think this project was really interesting. Was there any sort of like support that you were able to gather for the album and for the funding and just to get the initiative forward?
Absolutely. My university helped support that. So yeah, I received 2 awards, and then an award. We have a fund at the university for distributing. So there's a special fund for getting your work that's already completed out into the world. And so that paid for Centaur Records, their bill. But I also did use probably, okay, let me think through this. Less than a third of the project was personally resourced, so I paid for that part. And then 2/3 of the project was supported by my university. It's expensive to put together an album. I did it on campus here where I work. The convenience of that was important to me for my pianist, and then my pianist and I, and then their pianist fees. And yeah, it's a lot of work, and it's expensive to put together. Thank you, Susan. Sue. All right.
Well, I know we're kind of getting at the end of our time here, but I mean, first of all, Lynn, this has been an absolute pleasure. I mean, just to talk with you and have you share all this with us. Congratulations on this amazing project. This
Thank
is
you.
going to be enriching the world of music for generations to come, and we just can't thank you enough for it and all that you do. I'm honored to work with you on multiple capacities, now. People are leaving.
Yeah.
So I
And
just,
showing up.
and showing people
Hi,
just,
Doug. Now I can see
hey,
Doug.
oh,
Hello.
it's Doug, our teacher.
Bravo,
He's here.
Lynn.
Thank you.
Bravo,
It's so
Bernard.
nice to see you.
Great
Hey, Doug.
presentation. Very well done, and so proud to see what both of you guys have done with your lives. Been great. It's
Thank
been
you.
great. Bravo.
Couldn't have done it without you, Doug. You're
We couldn't have done it without you.
Couldn't have
Oh,
done it
yeah,
without
you
you.
could.
We
Yeah.
stand
No.
on your shoulders.
Actually,
I just wanted to.
actually, no.
So good to
Like,
hear from you.
well, this is so joyous that we're all here on this call. So I just, in the last 5 minutes, we got camp coming up, 2025. I was just going to ask you, what are you excited about for KBHC 2025 as
Well,
we wrap up this session?
yeah, the new venue, that's exciting. I haven't been there before. I've seen pictures. It looks great. And I'm excited in how I know it's slightly less rustic. And so I'm excited about the possibilities with that, because there are limitations to being in a more rustic environment. There are advantages too, but um, certainly going to White Mountain School was an upgrade from all the bug bites and living with chipmunks in your living. I several times the chipmunks would come and eat my snacks in my cabin. So it was nice to, I loved the rustic part of Ogontz, and I know the camp was there for many years, and White Mountain School was an upgrade in some of those respects. And even like intonation, the weather can be inconsistent in June. So sometimes it's cold and sometimes it's warm, and intonation is affected accordingly. So it was nice that it could be more consistent in temperature controlled buildings. And I'm interested in how Tilton is going to be even different, more different in our experience in the work that we're able.
Two things just in relation to that. The pianos are much better. I tried
There
them.
you go. Thank you.
We have more performing spaces. Sorry, I'm just going to respond to what you're saying, because
Oh, I
I feel
appreciate
you. I feel you on all those. I mean, the piano at Ogontz was like,
Whew.
it was the piano from hell or something. It was piano hell. They would just leave it outside like all year, and it's like, oh, now you can use it. Just try tuning it. We tune it within an hour, it would just completely get in some other universe.
Right.
Yeah, we were literally playing, George Crumb's Microcosmos anyways. Like, so, and at the White Mountain School, they were better. They probably weren't the best, but
Right.
they were better, and they were temperature controlled. But pianos at Tilton are a much bigger upgrade now that you mentioned that. And we have multiple performing venues. So continue. I just wanted
Well,
to
I'm
respond.
also interested. I always like to perform a solo on the faculty recital, and I'll likely choose something either new or something from this album for that. I like to always perform pieces by women composers there. So I'm looking forward to that part. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody again. And the food is almost always delicious. I enjoy it. So I always gain a little bit of weight every time I go to Horn Camp. So all the things that the reason why I've been coming back to this camp every year, it's my extended family. I'm really looking forward to seeing everybody again in this new venue and exploring that together.
All right. Well, as am I, and I'm sure everybody else on the call. So thank you all for joining us today. Braden, I don't know if you have to send us out at all, but I'm just going to say thanks for coming. Thanks to Lynn. It's been such a great hour and a half. So hope to see you all this summer at KBHC 2025.
Great.
Yeah, Bernard, do you have anything? Do you want to talk about the January or March sessions with Jesse and
Oh, sure.
any of the
Yeah,
Horn
real
Camp
quick.
Connect?
Yeah, we do have some 3 more episodes this coming year before camp. We have an episode in January, which is a little tentative. It's going to feature some of our new faculty, which we have some. We'll be announcing about that. We're very excited about. And then the episode in March will be hosted by Nikki Labonte. So I believe that's going to be about women in horn playing. So to kind of piggybacking on what we're doing today even. And then I believe the next episode, which will be April or May, maybe it's May. Details are a little bit spotty. May, right, exactly. May, Aaliyah will be doing that one, and we'll be focusing on her amazing work as an artist and keeping up to date in what she's doing. So we have some really exciting things to come leading up to the 2025 camp and the new venue. So that's the season.
All right. Thank you so much, Bernard, and thank you again, Lynn. To all our guests, thank you so much for attending the November Horn Camp Connect event. We're so happy that you joined us to learn about Lynn's important work. If you'd like to rewatch today's session or share with others, you can find it on our YouTube page early next week. We hope you've enjoyed this year's presentations of Horn Camp Connect, which is Cormont Music's gift to the global horn community. I know many of you also joined us at the White Mountain School for KBHC this past summer. As you reminisce on all your experiences with us throughout the year, we hope you consider supporting Cormont Music with an end-of-year donation. A donation of any size would be extremely impactful for our organization, and we appreciate your support. To make a donation online, you can visit the website horncamp.org, or if you'd like to mail a donation, please keep an eye on your email for more details coming in a few weeks. Just as a side note, you can subscribe to our email list on the website to stay updated. Thank you for joining us and supporting Cormont Music, and we hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.